In recent years, extreme weather patterns have seen infrastructure crumble. Floods in KwaZulu-Natal, the drought experienced in some parts of the country have further exacerbated issues around infrastructure maintenance. Now, the South African Institution of Civil Engineering has released its report, which is not showing much of a healthy picture of the state of roads, rail, water and other infrastructure in the country. Something that is worrying because infrastructure is at the center of public and economic well-being. Let's now speak to Professor Marianne Vanderschuren, who is the president of the South African Institution of Civil Engineering. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. This is a report that has been coming out since 2006, and let's start with this current one. I mean, an overall grade of D for South Africa's existing infrastructure. What does this tell us about the state of infrastructure in the country?
That's correct. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to the listeners. So SAICE has been grading infrastructure since 2006. The grades go from A to E, where A is world class, B is fit for the future, C is satisfactory for now, D is at risk, and E is unfit for purpose. The overall grade at this moment in time is D, which means that we are at risk for failure. There is poor maintenance, we're not coping with demand, and the public may be suffering. There are 4 sectors that are in E, which provides a health or safety risk to the public.
And in your own assessment, looking at what you've done in the past versus this current report, are things improving or getting worse?
No, unfortunately, this is the worst grade that we have ever given. Just to give you an overview, in 2006, we gave this infrastructure overall a D+. In 2011, just after all the investments for the World Cup, it was a C-, and it has been deteriorating ever since. It was a D+ in 2017, and it's a D now.
And we've seen, extreme weather patterns having an impact on infrastructure. At the same time, there have been global events like rising commodity prices, the COVID-19 pandemic. And I wonder how much of this has been a threat to the integrity of infrastructure in our country?
It's a tremendous threat. We have seen what the floods have done in KwaZulu-Natal. I see that you're showing the potholes and the sinkholes that we are having. Gauteng alone over the last 5 years has had over 200 sinkholes. But even in the Western Cape, after the droughts and the effect to the soils, we see some unexpected sinkholes where we can't, from looking at the surface, identify that there is something happening underneath. So South Africa, in these changing conditions, needs to change the way we do the assessment of infrastructure. Unfortunately, in trying to put the infrastructure report card together, we have found that a lot of the asset management information that we used to get in previous years has not been forthcoming. There are some improvements on the way, but unfortunately that didn't help us putting this report together. So it was difficult to get a good assessment of the infrastructure this time around.
And I suppose for you, as you're putting this together, the other area of concern when I was going through a report, there's also a lack of solid waste collection services. And this, of course, leads to all kinds of complications, and one of them being the blockage of drainage systems. And in such extreme weather patterns where we're seeing flooding, it's a huge concern because this will also cause continue to cause a concern, especially even sometimes when we've seen loss of human life.
Yeah, I agree with you fully here. I think what needs to happen is not only improvements in the people and the people that are in municipalities to make sure that they are educated and understand how this is working, but I think we need to actually get into primary schools that every single citizen actually understands what things like littering actually mean for our infrastructure. And there are obviously other things as well. Our infrastructure is often attacked as well. But littering, to me, is something that needs to be educated to small children in primary school, and they will then take the message to their older siblings, their parents and grandparents.
And Prof, you also, are touching on another issue which we see quite a lot of talk around, which is, the leaking taps. We've seen recently the water crisis. And one of the interesting things that I found in your report is that, while we look at the leaking taps being a concern, but you're also expressing concern in the report about the pipes that are underground, that we are also not seeing, that could potentially see us, really having a system that continues to crumble.
Yeah, so nationally, about 40% of the water just leaks away. So we treat it for human consumption, and then it just leaks away in the pipes. We do have issues that we are a country of drought. So we also need to rethink how we do things. If I can make a comparison to London, London uses every drop of water 7 times. As I just indicated, we use 0.6 of a drop of water. We cannot rely on having more and more dams. We need to rethink how we utilize, for example, our water resources and other resources.
And if we are to also improve the economy, one of the things is that we look at the state of rail, which is also quite, really, really poor. And you think about how poor it is for the commuter, the commuters as well. And this will continue to have an impact on the economy.
I agree with you. There are 2 stories that I can share with you. I came across a report where it indicated that in the month of November 2021 alone, 200 kilometers of rail was lifted off its sleepers. Now, that's not poor people that try to feed their family. Those are syndicates that are attacking our infrastructure. The other thing is, and the Praza rail network has more or less collapsed. They have very little usage anymore. If you look at, if I can just use the Central Line in Cape Town as an example, for every train that is not running there that was full in the morning peak in the past, that we see that that will create about 100 overloaded taxis on our roads, minibus taxis. Now, even though the minibus taxi industry would like to have that work, our roads cannot cope with that. The Central Line in its peak about 8 years ago would have 8 trains in each direction in the morning peak. That is 800 minibus taxis. And I'm a transport engineer. I can tell you that that is probably a full lane of minibus taxis, more or less, that you would need to add to the road network everywhere where the demand is.
And when one looks at the state of the roads, as you say, one doubts if this, pressure can be handled given some of the accidents that we've seen. But Prof, as we round up, we are out of time. I mean, your report very interestingly, but I just wonder though, how much of what we are seeing today is as a result of what we've seen over the years, because we've seen some SOEs struggling, being bailed out. How much of this money could have gone towards making sure that our infrastructure is properly maintained?
I think what I always like to use is the 2011 example. In 2008, 2009, when we were doing the investment, the building industry, the construction industry in South Africa actually made sure that South Africa didn't go into a recession. This industry can carry the country. What needs to happen is that government investment is increased so that we make sure that this industry can do what it has done in the past for our people. That includes the building of new infrastructure as well as the maintenance of infrastructure.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. Do appreciate it this afternoon. I wish we had more time to talk about this report as it really touches on quite a number of important issues. That's Professor Marianne Vanderschuren, President of South African Institution of Civil Engineering.